What's up, everybody? I am 4 weeks into this off-season period, coming off of like what was a prep and calling this the holding phase. So basically trying to bring food up, brought PEDs down, relatively hold this conditioning. I talked about it last time, but relatively hold this conditioning and kind of prime myself for when I make this next push up in the off season with food really getting aggressive, bringing body weight up, bring PEDs up. So this point is just to drop off the fatigue, have some aspect around health recovery, which health is good. I had an echo, my ejection fraction was 70%, so lab markers looked really good. It's just a smart idea to have some fraction of time during the year where you're back to like a baseline for PEDs. So that's what this phase is. Also bringing training volume down to have some just connective tissue repair, just prepare for the long bout of off season that I'm going to take to grow and move into the open. So body weight was 236.4. It's just been incrementally coming up. The first 2 weeks of adding food in were just maintained my weight basically. So I wasn't quite too as aggressive as I need to be. But now food is up to 3,900 calories on my training days, 3,300 on my non-training days. And I just moved today to doing 6 meals a day. I had been doing 5, so I fasted for a bit in the morning because I had some fat loss agents present that took advantage of the fasting state, and now food volume is getting so large that it makes sense to spread it out. So I get 2 meals now before I train. So over the next, probably the next 3 weeks, keep slowly letting body weight move up till I'm probably around I think I'll probably be around 238 before I really push to drive some more size up. But anyway, today at the Muscle Factory, we're training pull. It's my Friday session. So right now, I always train legs on Wednesday, and then I'll just do push-pull, and it'll rotate over a 4-day split. So it'll be like push, legs, pull, push, and then that'll just keep rotating. So this Friday, if it's pull or push, however that rotates, I always do side delts first. So I'm hitting side delts 3 times a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I'll get 4 sets across each of those training sessions for a total of 12 sets of side delt work. So we'll start this session off with side delts and walk you through my pull session. All right, so I start with the prime lateral raise. So this kind of the rare instance where you're able to match the resistance profile to the strength profile really, really well. So on this one, I set it up for the pins on the 5. So on the normal dumbbell lateral, you won't get a lot of tension out of the bottom. It really gets towards the top when the muscle's shortening, and I has a hard time contracting anyway. So with the prime, it's cool because with the 5, you can set up to where you hit in like middle beginning range, and then it lets off towards the top when the muscle already has the hardest time contracting to get short. So this profile matches the strength profile of the delt well. You'll see on this one, like I lean into the pad and keeps my arms a little bit more in front of me to where you're in the scapular plane. So you'll line up the delt really well in this plane, so it's not directly out to the side, it's not too far in front of you. If you get any like pinchiness in the rotator cuff, it's a good position to train at. So with this one, I'll stay in like that 12 to 15 rep area. Usually keep the same load across 4 sets. I just let the reps drop down, and I'm taking these sets to 0, 1 RIR, pretty much at failure points. And the side delt, it doesn't fatigue out like for when you're moving into your pull movements or even your push movements. But it's one of those muscle groups where you're never gonna have big enough side delts. So always just train them first in sessions, even if it's leg day. That Wednesday, side delts are hit first, so I can accrue enough volume for the whole week. So one thing I moved from when I was prepping was training 6 days a week to now 4 days a week. So same training split basically, just added in more rest days, and I consolidated my leg day into one. So overall for the week, there was a reduction in volume. But reason being to have more rest days between when I'm training those upper body sessions to help with connective tissue recovery. And what I want to put a point is like I can absolutely still grow with lower volume. It's just it's a spectrum of growth, right? So we know, you know, as you come up to more volume, there's going to be more growth, you know, to a degree, but then it could be some type of, you know, U curve, and then as you get too high in volume, it'd be less productive. But I'm moving from a state also of higher fatigue to lower fatigue, which is going to make that same less volume I do more effective. So I was having to do more volume to accommodate for the greater degree of fatigue, causing less training adaptation. So just because you're shifting volume down into a higher recovery state, your volume will be more effective. So that's partly the reason why, but also just wanted some days out of the gym, honestly, to have more work done, and it still can be a very productive way to structure your training. And remember, like for volume, think of it almost like calories. Your total daily caloric intake is what matters, right? Maybe to a lesser degree where you're eating those calories. That's how volume is. Like your training volume for the week, the total is what matters. The frequency, how you disperse that volume, it is going to be a secondary aspect to it that is a little bit less of importance. As long if that volume was equated, it probably doesn't make a huge difference. Anyway, moving on to second exercise, first exercise for back, doing a Nautilus pull down, single arm. Problem with us, a lot of bodybuilders, is being able to get the arm externally rotated, because once we get that arm externally rotated and to be able to keep it adducted and tight to train the lat, it's hard for us to. Usually we end up doing pull downs with the elbow flared out. So getting in a single arm position, I can lean a little bit to keep that elbow tight and in line with those lat fibers. So you'll see even from the side view is I'll have a slight lean back, but keeping that in external rotation and driving the hip down to the hip into the ground. So for this lat movement, I start as my primary because we're going to be able to load more mid-range through a full range motion. So that's why we start with it first. Try to start with something that would take the lat to the full range. Our other lat movement will be a row, mainly training like the very shortened part of the movement. So here we're going to do 3 sets. Same principle. Start with a load, 8 to 12 reps, and just adjust the load as needed to stay within that rep range. My preference though is just to stay with the same load and let the reps drop. It's of lesser importance. Main thing, just make the sets hard. All right, so next movement for back day. So we hit our best option for lats. Moving on to best option for upper back to take it through the full range of motion. And of course we're gonna hit some upper lat as well, teres major, rear delt, prime, extreme row. Awesome machine. Most rows, they get really hard in the short phase, and this is the one opportunity with a prime row that you can load in the lengthen, which we can produce the most force in. So do 3 sets here, and how I load this prime is about 60% of the load on the top peg, so that's gonna make it really heavy at the start of the movement. The rest of the load in the middle, never load the bottom. Loading the bottom makes it like any other row you could do. So we want to match the strength profile and the resistance profile pretty well, and this does it. So, and you'll see like setup wise, I'm positioning my torso to where you'll see that upper arm path of the humerus is right below 90. So at 90 degrees, you're going to limit some range of motion. Also, it keeps start binding a little bit in the shoulder. We'll keep that arm internally rotated, flared out some. So the opposite from our pull down, trying to get really externally rotated, right? So keep it about, not 90, but right below that, 70 to 80 degrees, allowing those scapulas to fully retract and fully protract. That's the idea of this movement. We want a lot of range of motion at the trap. We also are going to allow some thoracic flexion to occur and to get some extension. That way we get full range of motion of those scapulas and traps contracting. And again, we're going to hit some other parts around the back as well, but this will be the heavy focus for upper back. 3 sets here, 8 to 12 reps. Right, so moving on to my second lat movement. So we train the lat, lengthen, and we get about mid-range in the lat for that pull down. So to get the full action of the lat, we want to move to a row. So we get that last bit of shortening to train that part of the range of the lat. Because with the pull down, we kind of get here, can't get all the way fully back, so that's why we have the row in place. And setup is to get that hand still externally rotated, and so we can pull and keep that elbow close to the hip. And for guys that are letting those elbows flare out in your pull downs, your rows that are intentionally trying to be lat focused, it's why you won't see that lower lat development. And it might have a lot of teres development, but you want that low lat. That's why we position ourselves and a lot of times using these single arm movements. Now, you don't have to use a single arm movement. If you have great external rotation, you can keep that elbow tucked tight. By all means, use a bilateral movement. You want to be time efficient too, because rather than having to rotate between hands. So 3 sets here, 8 to 12 reps on the row, and we'll move on to an upper back focused pull down. Right, so last compound back movement we'll do is an upper back pull down, or whatever you want to call it. We'll call a teres, trapper, delt pull down. But the idea is rather than be externally rotated, keep it internally rotated. And so the path will lead where the elbow's finishing somewhat close to 90 degrees, but it'll definitely be more teres major, lower trap. So we'll have all those movements that fully cover all range of motion for the traps, teres major, and lat through those 4 compound movements. I'm going to do 3 sets on the pull down and staying in the 10 to 15 rep range of those. And the idea is to let those scaps fully protract and fully retract, because we're thinking of it as an upper back movement. So last 2 movements we'll do will be a rear delt isolation and also a bicep movement. So we have the prime Pec Deck Fly here, which is awesome for rear delts. Kind of the same idea of our rows. With the prime, we can set it on the cam setting 5, which is mid-beginning range. So we can load the rear delt when it's stretched. It can produce the most force. Then it lets off at the end. So again, the profile matches really well. I'll do 4 sets there for rear delts, and I superset it with my bicep curl at a time efficiency, and I'll do a cable curl. So setting that up so at the very bottom, basically that cable's in a straight line with the hand, elbow, and shoulder, so there's no minimal tension. Then as I'm curling, right as the elbow bends, I start to hit about 90 degrees with the cable in my hand, where I'm getting peak tension. Then it kind of lets off when the bicep gets fully contracted. So again, it's a cable curl where we can set up a little bit more preferential tension at the bottom. Also, I try to make sure that I'm leaning a little bit so that cable lines up perfectly through my shoulder, the elbow, and the hand. So that cable's, coming outside or inside of the elbow, it starts to bind the elbow, and that's when you'll have people start getting wrist pain curling, or they'll get inflammation, and like tennis elbow, golfer's elbow. It's all about positioning so your joints can freely move. Cable's a really nice way to do that. So 4 sets there. I keep the reps 8. Some will start up around 15 reps and let them drop down to 8. And that'll wrap up my pull session. So we'll probably be increasing food this week. I might just take an untracked meal. I somewhat track it, but I think I need the extra calorie boost this week. Weight's been slowing down with an increase, even with me increasing food the past week, like about 400 calories over on average across my days. So anyway, thank y'all for tuning in. Talk to you next time.